Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. It is a new week. It's a blank canvas. It's time to tell stories and paint pictures, and positive ones. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. 3 minutes late, not Tom's fault, my fault, because I didn't load the thumbnail. Yellow card for me. Boy, I am racking them up this season. This is my third one, I think, in the space of 4 weeks. Thomas!
Hello.
At ease. Welcome back to Squad Central.
Oh, good to be back. Good to be. It's funny. I've done 3 shows today. It's almost like I didn't have a weekend off. It's nuts.
Did you? What'd you do? Your shows? Other shows?
My show. Deluded GOONER asked me on earlier, so I joined him. And now you. I'm not complaining. It's I've been devoid of content, you know. So it's nice to get back into the swing of it all.
You saved the best till last.
Of course.
Yeah. For those listening live, thanks for joining. For most of you listening on replay, thank you for joining. Don't forget to lob your comments in the YouTube section, and please also check out the audio on Apple Podcasts as well. Listen to our Chief Like Officer, Tammy Steels, and hit that like button. Hello, Morgie. Hello, Lone Star. PW, Yasso de Gunnis. Hope all is well. Ian, welcome. Kevin, Ola. We are all well. Trev is here. Carol's here. The whole fam jam is here. Welcome to everyone in the chat. Harvey. I mean, there wouldn't be a show without Harvey and his caps, right, everyone? We love you, Harvey. Brave, welcome. You are brave. It's the 3rd time I'm listening to Tom today. Absolute legend.
Too much.
Way too much. Runs with cows. Is gonna, I'm hoping, we've been exchanging emails, sent me a beautiful picture of himself with the Highbury Squad, not the Highbury Squad, the Zenith Coins Arsenal Invincible set. And he looks absolutely fabulous. I'm hoping, I haven't said this to him yet on the email, Tom, but for him to join me after a post-game show, and then we can share his picture and his great story as well. Thank you so much for also sharing a personal story with me too. I love it when you guys that. Always here for that. The Highbury Squad at gmail.com, people. Right. Here we are. Feels a bit weird when Arsenal don't play, Tom, but I also really quite enjoy it. By the way, your weekend away, did you do anything that you want to share with the folks? Did you eat anything spectacular? Did you play? Did you whip someone at Scrabble? Was it one of those?
Did I whip someone? I'm not going to divulge that information, Sophie. That's very private. No, we had. Well, it was it's G's dad's 60th this year, so we've been doing a couple of celebratory things. Went out for a nice meal last night. An Indian place I've not been to before. It was very good. Her uncle and you got like kind of family friends you see as aunts and uncles, even though they're not direct kind of relations. They have this big thing for like always eating really spicy food and like one-upping one another with like who can have the spiciest food. So last night we went to this Indian place and they're known for their fiery wings. So I got like the 2-star out of 4 like wings because that's about what I'm able to do, and they went for the whole kind of full thing. And my effective brother-in-law was next to me and basically said, like, yeah, he's been here before and had those, and they are like, it's horrendous how hot they are.
Wow.
So he was looking forward. So we were all kind of looking forward to seeing how they dealt with them, because they're always so like overly confident about how much spicy food they can deal with. And it's fair to say that they struggled. They were sitting there sweating, and it was great. Even I thought the 2-star ones are very hot, so I dread to think what 4-star ones were.
So basically you ate the Zinchenko wings and the rest of the gang had the Miles Lewis Skelly wings. Hot and spicy.
That's harsh on Miles Lewis Skelly, arguably, but yeah, sure.
By the way, I'm a chicken korma guy. Is that the one with a girl? Is that the one with the coconut sauce, the chicken korma?
Yeah, yeah, it will be.
Yeah,
It'll be made
yeah.
with
Bit of a
that.
wimp. Bit of a wimp when it comes to all that stuff. I did eat some Greek meatballs yesterday. Tony mastered the old koftedes, as we like to call them, with a little tahini, Super Bowl Sunday meatballs and dip. And it was great to see my version of Tottenham here in the United States, the Kansas City Chiefs, get absolutely thrashed. It was just glorious, absolutely glorious. I don't like Philadelphia either, but hey, when you're a Broncos fan and you're in the same division, you can't root for the enemy. It was like watching Tottenham in the Champions League final. Didn't want them to win, let alone do a 3-peat. Right, let's get stuck into some football, shall we? Our top 5 talking points. It is the final act of the season. It's here. 14 games in the Premier League to go, and also the Champions League as well. A delightful vision there, seeing Benjamin White back. And so here we go. Get involved, you guys. Question number 1, top talking point number 1. For you, Tom, is can Arsenal rewrite history? I'm not sure if it's a case of rewriting history or writing new history. I guess what I mean by rewrite history is change the narrative that has been over the last 2 seasons. What's your take? Are they able to do this even though they've had a lot of adversity and had to overcome quite a bit this season?
I mean, sure. Will they? I highly doubt it. Is kind of where I'm probably at with that. We are so lacking in numbers with the injuries, and obviously we just lost Gabriel Martinelli as well for potentially a month or more. Saka's not going to be back until March, April time. Ben White is coming back, which is obviously a really good sign and a good thing for us, but having not done any business at all in January, which was certainly a failure, it's very hard to see Arsenal picking up, either of the remaining 2 trophies, and they would need a lot to go their way, and they would need to do a lot more than they currently are doing, with very, very few options as well. We'd need the likes of Ethan Nwaneri to step up quite a lot. So yeah, I'm not optimistic. It's fair to say.
The reason why I chose these 3, I mean, Saka's not going to be back. And when he does come back, we don't know kind of the player that he's going to be, Tom. But the reason why I picked Lewis Skelly and Nwaneri is they're playing with a fearlessness that I don't think that we've seen since maybe Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe came onto the scene. And it's been so refreshing. I mean, maybe, just maybe, them coming into their own, this helps shift the psyche as much as, you've got experienced players. Maybe these 2 and their fearlessness and kind of what they can provide to the team can galvanize even the senior players in ways that they haven't experienced before.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like new blood coming into the sides, and certainly getting kind of that extra boost of excitement and energy and freshness, which is obviously really important for the team. So yeah, I do think that both of those players are going to have a positive effect. They've already had a standout season. No matter what happens from here to the end of the season, it will be known as their breakout season proper, and they have added a lot to Mikel Arteta's side and have cemented their place. Not only that, but maybe even unsettled some of the existing players like Saka and Calafiori in particular have obviously been out with injuries. They have got to fight back too, for positions in the team that would usually be, unequivocally theirs. But when Saka returns, I expect he'll go straight back in. But Calafiori has got a huge task to kind of outmaneuver Lewis Skelly, who you would argue is Arsenal's starting left back at the moment, even with everybody fit, which is an absolute credit to him. So yeah, I look forward to it.
All right, you've jumped onto my 3rd point, but I think I'll throw it in before the second one because they all kind of tie in together anyway. You mentioned Calafiori. Miles Lewis Skelly in his emergence has been nothing short of sensational. I think the way he's been treated in the media is quite grotesque, which is why, as Arsenal fans, we have to really just keep putting him up on a pedestal and keep championing him. He seems to be like, I hope not, but the new Sterling or Sancho or Rashford for the media, and it just grosses me out. And that's a show for another day, but you can comment on that if you want. But right to start White. Now, he's been out for quite some time. He's not going to be match fit. We've got to treat him really carefully. Arteta said as well that he's not going to rush him back. But when he is fit, what does that back line? We talked about this a few months ago, and I don't know if you've changed your mind, but I believe you said if you were starting a Champions League final, it would be Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber. Has the Lewis Skelly thing changed your mind? What does the defense look like to you with a fit Benjamin White?
Yeah, I have certainly changed my mind now. If it was tomorrow, and we had a fully fit squad, I would go with Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Lewis Skelly. Based on what I've seen, he has been astonishingly good, and does not look like an 18-year-old just bursting onto the scene into that position. His strength, his composure, his fearlessness, and all of those attributes and more have certainly established himself there. But Ben White's return is definitely a welcome one. It's a really positive one for us. It gives us depth. It gives us rotational options. It gives us tactical differences between him and Timber. It allows maybe even for Saliba to get a break potentially at some stage, because you can move White into the right centre-half role and keep Timber at right back as well with the emergence of Lewis Skelly. So it gives us options. It gives us the opportunity to change things, to bring players off sooner. And if Arsenal were to do anything for the rest of the season, I'm sure that Ben White would have a massive hand to play in that. But yeah, our best 11 right now has Miles Lewis Skelly in it, and that's absolutely brilliant to say.
Tom, it's funny, I was chatting with Harry a little bit earlier, and I wanted to just put some of these comments up for you about changing formation. Here it is from Jonathan, and there's one other one. Maybe we should change formation. We have lots of defenders. I've heard the Calafiori playing him up front because he played up front when, I don't know if he was 9 years old when he did that. Could hold up play well. What's your take on this discussion that's brewing about, seems to be the trend, about changing formation or tactics? What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think we've got the players in Nwaneri, Havertz, and Trossard to start in those forward three positions. You've got Odegaard, Partey, Rice. You've got Ben White coming back to offer us the opportunity to play White and him at right back, so we don't have to worry about playing players out of position. We don't have wing backs. Timber can play in kind of an overlapping role, but it's not natural to him. So the idea of changing formation to a three at the back with a wing back system doesn't really work. And we've spent a lot of time on the system and on players' roles within that system. So no, I'm not subscribed to the idea of changing the formation personally. I think we have the personnel to cope with the current system that we play, that has got us into that's taken us to where we are now, and has taken us to the position where we're competing for titles. So yeah, no, not for me.
A real quick one from our chief like officer. Give Timber a rest. He seems to have lost a little momentum in the last few games, and I'm going to throw in the second talking point, because I feel like nobody has played at their super best. If I was to pick a player that is probably Gabriel at the back, Thomas Partey in spurts in the midfield, but definitely one of his better seasons for Arsenal. Saka before he got injured, but nobody has reached their peak at all. And in fact, most players, Tom, I think, have played their worst on the same day, which is horrific for a football team. And recovery has been tough. And maybe, Odegaard coming back maybe too soon. Who has to step up for this team to thrive? And it doesn't have to just be one player. I picked those three players, even though I think Kai Havertz, being the top scorer, is delivering as much as he can as a lone man wolf, the world on his shoulders without any rest because we've got no backup. Who do you think has to tick for this team to tick in this final act?
I think the main thing is the senior players. the players that have got the most responsibility are those that are the most senior in the group. I think that you could look at someone like Raheem Sterling, for example, who to this point has offered very little in the opportunities that we've had to see him. And as someone who has won titles, someone who has picked up trophies and is, earning a good wage and has come to Arsenal and said the words, "You're about to see the best of me," he's not done that. So somebody like him has to step up in these moments and has to be, an option for Arsenal. You need players like Leandro Trossard, absolutely, delivering more. We need Declan Rice to start scoring more goals from midfield because his goal scoring's not been good enough this season. He knows that. He's spoken about that himself. Martin Odegaard absolutely needs to be doing more. I think it was absolutely the touchstone moment in that Newcastle tie where he missed that opportunity to score. Had he scored that, it could have been a completely different situation, but it wasn't. And a lot of the responsibility for that game, sadly, therefore, lands to a degree on him and his performance, on lack of performance in that game. And of course, Mikel Arteta himself has to take a lot of, responsibility and has to make the right decisions for the group and has to make sure he's continuing to, ask the absolute maximum of his side, but also allowing them to give the maximum by rotating as effectively as we can and reintegrating cautiously but strategically as well. So yeah, that is certainly, I think, the key figures in the side, and Havertz needs to finish the chances when they fall to it.
It's funny because Jonathan just put that up, and the spotlight is always on Havertz and his missed chances. And of course it was, I don't want to say I could have scored that goal against Manchester City, but I would have hit the target, I think, given the time that he had on the ball. And Odegaard, I love him, and I think that he's been sensational for us. You could also say, Tom, that we were an Odegaard miss away or a penalty miss away from, the League Cup and the FA Cup and getting through. These fine margins in sports and football. Odegaard scores that chance and it's 2-1 against Newcastle. Odegaard doesn't miss a penalty. Kai doesn't miss a penalty. But I feel like he really needs to be the one more than any of them. Because of because we lack so much creativity. We suffered when he wasn't in the team. He's suffering without Saka. But the energy of Waneri, I would definitely roll the Waneri dice now for the last few games of the season. But it feels to me that Saliba and Odegaard kind of get away with it.
Rice, well, you can throw in.
Yeah, the way that Gabriel, Big Gabby at the back, and Kai are not as forgiven by fans. And I think Saliba especially really needs to step up. He's been quite, I want to say, terrible this season. He's not been great.
Yeah, he's been uncharacteristically poorer than we expect.
I don't want to start believing that it's because, his head's being turned. I think he's made some comments in the last few days, about that. But to me, Saliba and Odegaard, when you start the spine from the back and you go through the middle, those two are the ones for me that need to step up the most.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Odegaard is the captain. I mentioned Rice because I think his lack of goal scoring has gone under the radar this season. Saliba has not been as good as he has been in previous seasons. There's been some rockier moments, out of character. No, I don't think anything to do with the stories with Real Madrid. It's completely coincidental. He's one of the best players in the world. Of course, he's going to get linked with the best teams in the world. And, obviously a lot has happened this season and a lot of things have gone against us. And particularly for some of those players like Rice, like Odegaard, they've had issues this season. Rice has had his broken toe problem. Odegaard had his bad ankle injury and then subsequent illness. So, yeah, there's been reasons behind that, but still they need to step up more. Rice is definitely more recently turning that around and his performance against Man City was excellent. He was arguably one of the only two alongside Partey that performed well against Newcastle. So, yeah, I think across the spectrum, we need to see better performances, much, much better performances.
Okay, so I may as well throw this question in from Harvey while we were talking about Saliba. And by the way, name blocked. Just relax a little bit, okay? Just relax. I'm not digging Saliba out. I'm just calling it as I see it too. But just relax on your comments overall. Would you sell Saliba if we were offered 180 million?
Yeah, probably. I don't see that. I mean, he's got 2 years left on his deal. We had a real hard time in renegotiating the last one. And if he's willing to leave, if he wants to go, and that's what Arsenal offered, yeah, I think that opens up Arsenal's ability to spend on not just a replacement, but on bringing in the elite level striker that we've wanted. But I'd rather he stayed. If it was a case of you saying, if it's a case of like Saliba signs a 4-year extension or we sell for 180 million, I'd rather he signed the extension. But if you're saying I've got no guarantees of that, and in the summer you get 180 million offer, and Khalid asks a fair question: Do you trust that money that you get from Saliba gets spent appropriately? And the answer is we don't know. So it's hard. If you said that it's a difference between him signing a new deal or being sold for that amount of money, I'm keeping him all day long because it's the obvious choice. But the problem is that there's a good chance that he could leave for free in 2027, which is an absolute no-go. That cannot happen. So yeah, and we know Real Madrid are very good at getting those free deals. So yeah, we mean
like Trent incoming.
Exactly. I mean, Trent's what, £100 million player. So you can't afford to lose it. If Liverpool do lose Trent for free, that is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious.
I try not to play the what if game these days, but I'm going to right now. If it meant that and I'm guaranteeing you this, that you sell Saliba for 180, say if it's offered, and the club are going to get Alexander Isak, which I've sworn that I would never talk about ever again, but here I am. Okay. It's only a hypothetical, everyone. I know that we're not going to get him. Remember what I said on last week's show. But would you do that deal? Knowing
I'd rather keep Saliba. Like if you said it was a case of like you're keeping Saliba for the long term.
Saliba's going to Real Madrid and that money is going to be reinvested in Isak.
But is the alternative Saliba stays, signs a new deal, and
there's no Isak? Correct.
I'd rather keep Saliba. Oh, Arsenal have had a 30-goal a season striker before in Aubameyang, and we went nowhere. We didn't look like we were competing for any of the top honours. We lifted the FA Cup, sure, but a Man United side has done that recently. It's not a measure of being one of the best teams in the country. It can happen. We've had the top striker to be able to be in positions where you're winning and competing for titles. You need that defense. You need those key figures in your backline. You need a spine, and that's why Arteta has focused on that, because obviously he inherited quite a few talented, very young forward players in Saka and Martinelli, and Saliba as well. But he's added to that of Gabriel and Timber and White, and now of course developing and bringing through Miles Lewis-Skelly. So if the choice is between Saliba for the rest of his career or Isak for the rest of his career, it's Saliba without even a hesitation. It's Saliba.
Do you think Saliba stays? A question I often ask guests, just riffing off because they're asking some good questions. I told them to lob their questions in for you. Do you think we still lose Saliba even if we win major honours with him?
I think if Saliba's ambition is to play for Real Madrid, it doesn't matter what Arsenal win. I think if Saliba has an ambition to play for Real Madrid, as so many players do, and if Arsenal were to win the league this season and they came along and offered Arsenal a huge sum of money, if Saliba says that he wants to go to Real Madrid, I don't see Arsenal standing in his way if they get offered a massive fee for him, because they know that they're going to struggle to get him to renew a new contract with so little time remaining on his contract. So they certainly will not want to lose him, but they will be so savvy to the idea of that reality. So yeah, but I personally don't think that Arsenal winning trophies guarantees Saliba stays for the rest of his time with Arsenal. Not
Tom, what's Gabriel Big Gabby's contract right now?
I think it's through till 28. I think
28.
there are talks about a new deal going on, and they're very like optimistic about that from what I've heard. So
Right.
2020, no, it's 27 as well. Sorry, but there is optimism about a renewal of his deal.
Because the frightening thing for me is that, you know, at the start of the season there was kind of big Gabby murmurings about Saudi, and we've just seen like a very young Duran go to Saudi. We haven't seen that kind of exodus as we did in the shiny new toy, new money the year prior, which I think was also a healthy thing for the European game. But I mean, there's not a chance that maybe we could lose them both, right?
It's football; anything can happen. You know,
Well, how much money are we willing to pay those two?
As in
Do you think?
weekly wages?
Yeah.
Oh, they're over 200 grand a week players. They are comfortably over 200 grand a week players. You know, they are. Gabriel is a senior figure, you know, in the team. It's not just about kind of his place as a starter. This guy's 27 years of age. His next contract is going to be his big prime years contract. So that's going to be £200,000 per week plus. And he deserves that. And Arsenal, of course, have done a lot of work to restructure their wages so that it falls more in line with that of a team that are competing, but also that they've moved on players like Cedric, who was on big wages, for example, and contributing very little whatsoever. You know, we've done a lot to move on those players. And also we've done a lot to kind of bring in money for players when they leave, like Nketiah, Smith Rowe and Ramsdale. So, yeah, without a doubt, you know, Gabriel should absolutely be a £200,000 plus per week player.
Do you think that when, similarly to, you know, when we bought Kai Havertz, it was initially as a midfielder, he's ended up as a number 9. When we bought Calafiori, do you think the long-term plan for Calafiori was to play at centre-back should we lose a centre-back from the squad?
No, I thought he was being brought in to play left-back.
Left-back.
I thought that was always his position. Miles Lewis-Skelly emergence is something the club would have been aware of, definitely, but you can't bank on, at the time, a 16, 17-year-old coming and doing what he has done. He has exceeded expectation. So that doesn't affect your spending on a player like Calafiori, for example, in that position when you are already in need of reinforcement. It's not like with Waneri where you've already got Ødegaard and Saka. You definitely would think about bringing in a player in those areas and perhaps holding back because you've got someone like Waneri, because you've already got that top level player in Ødegaard and Saka on the right-hand side. Whereas at left-back, we didn't have that. We had Tierney and Zinchenko and Tomiyasu and out of position Timber and out of Kivior as well. So there was always a chance that it was never a chance that we expected necessarily that Miles Lewis-Skelly would do this, but we absolutely had to go and sign a player that we thought could be our starter there and would grow. I mean, Calafiori, besides the teenagers, is our youngest player. He's younger than Saka. So, you know, people forget that. And I think Calafiori is impressed in what we've seen of him. It's just fitness has been a problem for him.
Yeah. It's funny because maybe when you see the emergence of Miles Lewis-Skelly, like you said, you know, does that change Mikel? You know, he's a square pegs round hole guy, but he's also, I love a hybrid player, a versatile player. So, you know, further down the line, thinking that maybe he is someone that could be adaptable if he's got, you know, he's got Timber, he's got Miles Lewis-Skelly. We don't seem to have the same reinforcements, of course, in the centre-back position, especially if Kivior is going to go. Might have to start looking for a centre-back this summer as well. I mean, that list could evolve from the transfer market. Okay, I'll get to some more of your questions in just a second. Okay, so we've talked about rewriting history and whether or not the Arsenal can pull that off this season. Let us know what you think. Who needs to step up the most? A variety of players that we've all kind of mentioned. Does Benjamin White start right away? And Tom still has Timber and Miles Lewis-Skelly starting a final tomorrow if White is fit. Let's get to the crux of these matches that are left. And kind of less so in the Champions League, but you could say, for me right now, I don't care how we play. I just want to get results and get to the final of the Champions League. We used to talk on the show a lot about when it gets to a certain part of the season, Tom, that it's all about the 3 points. I don't care if we play champagne pizzazz football. I just want 3 points. And it feels like we're in that zone more than any of the previous seasons, 22, 23, 23, 24. Are you entertainment versus results? Do you want to see a combination of both? Do you care as long as we get 3 points from here on in?
I honestly couldn't care less how we played if we're winning games. That's obviously, yes, you want to be playing good football. You want to be because I think what's important, it's not necessarily about the entertainment. It's about how you performed in those fixtures. So, for instance, this season, I feel that of the games that Arsenal have won, they deservedly won those games on the whole. And of the games that Arsenal have dropped points in, they've deserved to win the majority of them. I look at the 2 Newcastle games away from home and the Bournemouth game as the games that stood out for me as, Arsenal weren't the better side. They didn't deserve anything from those games. The Bournemouth game, of course, the red card did affect things, but even before the red card, we weren't performing well. You look at the other games where we dropped points or been eliminated from the FA Cup, for example, we have deserved far more than we got, from those. And that, for me, has come down to finishing. That's been the biggest issue with the team, is that when the chances have come, players like Havertz, players like Odegaard, players like Trossard and Martinelli haven't taken those chances enough when they are fallen, despite the fact that we're only 4 goals off our tally from the same stage of last season. We still, to win the league, we had to do more. We have to do more, and we haven't been able to do that. And obviously missing players and the issues we've suffered has been a big part of that. But it's not like we haven't been creating opportunities in games. So for me, you have to look beyond the results sometimes to get kind of a feel of how a team is operating. Like when managers are sacked, as in the case of Ten Hag, for example, Man United were being outplayed pretty much every single week. Teams like Palace and Bournemouth and Leicester, even, teams like this were outperforming them. They were outgunning them. Whereas Arsenal, when they haven't won games, on the whole, the majority of the time when Arsenal are dropping points, it's not that they haven't deserved to. They've deserved more from those games than they have got, but haven't deserved to win them because they've not finished the chances that they've created for themselves.
I was watching your show, and we exchanged messages in our WhatsApp group yesterday about you seem pretty, you had a strong opinion about Arne Slot and his arrogance towards the FA Cup. And Ian just, I thought I'd lob it in here, seeing as we're talking about, entertainment versus results. He's got a couple injuries, but really they've been very lucky with all of that this season. And that was an absolutely epic win for Plymouth. This is why I love the FA Cup, and I will always defend and stand up for her, because it is these giant killings. It was just absolutely brilliant from them. And I don't care if they're at the bottom of the Championship. They've been through a very rough season. Liverpool, that team should have beaten them. And Ian said too, imagine if Arteta had lost to Plymouth. And there was a video done by a Crystal Palace fan, because this all goes into point number 5 as well, fans versus fans and support. And I'm not here to chastise anybody by any stretch, but since Newcastle, it has been vitriolic, and it has been really quite breathtaking, and not in a good way, to see the venom, whether it's pointed at Miles Lewis-Skelly since City for the celebration, whether it's Odegaard's miss against Newcastle, whether it's Kai Havertz, Arteta's record in the domestic cups. I think the non-activity in the January transfer window compounded everything, Tom, which made that Newcastle loss feel absolutely worse than it did already. And then I saw the video from the Crystal Palace YouTuber who absolutely nailed on the Lewis Skelly thing. But I want to focus a little bit within here. And I know that it's not been a great season. The journey this season hasn't been fun to watch. It really hasn't. It's been exhausting. And mentally, I think it's taken its toll on many. But when you look at how professional and mature we were qualifying for the knockout stages of the Champions League, when you look at the fact that, you know, it's going to be you got to stretch the imagination to think that we can win the Premier League, but mathematically, it's not over until the math folk do the maths. And the domestic cups, no doubt, exceptionally disappointing. Getting to the semi-final of the League Cup and losing in the manner of which we did, really gut-wrenching. But it's funny because it's the same fans that complain about playing full-strength sides in the domestic cups and who say we just need to shoot for the Premier League and the Champions League. I think that's a little snobbery, and maybe we can, you know, sometimes we want to fly before we even hover. How do you quantify this narrative that's kind of happening, giving up, you know, in February, throwing the toys out the pram about the January transfer window? I think fans have every right to complain and be annoyed. I just don't like it when it gets a little dirty and it gets personal in those regards. You know, I've been supersonic in the past. But at the same time, I feel that they need the support now more than ever. Just talk me through your sense of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I also saw their video from the fan. I thought they absolutely got a spot on. You know, Arsenal are treated differently. Arsenal are treated differently by media. They're treated differently by pundits. I can't help but look at the examples of officiating decisions, and I do believe that there is a subconscious element to some of the decisions that are made against Arsenal from officials. I think there's enough evidence there to support that point of view of the decisions we've seen go against us, that you've never seen another example of its like, you know, again. And I think that our own fan base, you know, there's definitely, you know, social media has elevated and emphasized kind of the far end of one side of the spectrum, and, you know, definitely accentuates that craziness that social media allows through anonymity. And we know that it exists because the amount of times I'll do a phone-in show, for example, and offer the opportunity for people who have kind of more extreme views to come on, and they don't show up. And the ones that do disagree, I have a very good conversation, very grounded chat with them, you know, 9 times out of 10, nine times out of 100, I'd argue. And I think that the kind of that social element definitely does, and algorithms push a lot of the more extreme stuff into our faces through certain social media platforms. I mean, I was watching that. I probably, like, if that video the Crystal Palace fan came up, if I scroll to the next video, it'll be something horrific that I'm pushed to see. Not necessarily football related, but anything related, something horrible, something politically quite far right, quite often I find as well, just pops up on my feeds. And I think that where I do sympathize with some fans who say, you mentioned, have given up, is that I can't blame some, because, you know, I remember when Miles Lewis-Skelly got sent off against Wolves, and I wasn't working that game, and I was just watching the clips as they came in, because it was a 3 o'clock kickoff. And that, as soon as I saw the Miles Lewis-Skelly sending off, I was like, what's the point? What is the point of us trying? Because the amount of times that this stuff happens to us and that there isn't going against anybody else is mad to me. So I do empathize with fans, and they're like, what's the point? Because Arsenal, it feels like we're up against everybody. And then you obviously get people going, oh, it's Arsenal, woe is me. But thankfully, there are, you know, sensible people such as that Crystal Palace fan. We should really find out his name rather than because I keep referring to him as Crystal Palace fan.
Maybe someone in the chat can Google his name.
Might know who it is, and we can give credit therefore.
Yeah. But, I'll put the link. I'll put the link in the description as well, to make sure that he gets credit.
But thankfully, there are grounded people like that that see through the bollocks that we have to deal with, you know. And there's that. But yeah, the Arne Slot one's quite a good example, because, Can you imagine if Arteta had happened to us? Like, you think about when we went out to a lower league opposition, as we did to Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup a few years ago. You look at the lineup we went with that day. Saka starts, Odegaard starts, Martinelli starts. You know, the only senior players we had coming off the bench, I think, was Lacazette, who came off the bench. Liverpool didn't even bother to put Salah and Gakpo, for example, on the bench that day. And I just thought that's incredibly arrogant to assume that you don't need those players in your squad at all. I kind of got it against their last Champions League opponent because it was a genuine dead rubber, that game. So that's fine. But when you look at kind of the fact that you're in an FA Cup fourth round tie, we know that this is a competition known for giant killings and scalps. You need to be prepared if something doesn't go your way. You're away from home at a difficult, you know, unfamiliar, not the nicest of pitches, you know, lower league opposition. To not have any of them on the bench, it was incredibly arrogant of Slot. So to template that onto like the idea of it being an Arsenal situation, yeah, I would have found that, you know, incredibly hilarious to see the hypocrisy. And I've seen some Arsenal fans even try and make excuses for Slot because they're genuinely that desperate to not have that kind of argument go in Arteta's favour.
You know what's really interesting? And by the way, Neil, you're asking for context. I think we gave some good context for this part of the conversation, but let me know if there's something you might be missing. I remember last season when Newcastle were decimated with injuries, they got a lot of empathy from the media, you know, and there was something brewing about them under Eddie Howe. Maybe it's an English manager where they were becoming media darlings in some way, you know, this grand support up north and all that jazz. I thought Tottenham kind of were getting sympathy this season, but the media have been really quite harsh on Ange, and I'm not supporting him at all. He's done a horrible job, and they're decimated, though. They have been, right?
Yeah. You can point to the kind of their, you know, they are suffering with worse than even we've had ridiculous injuries. They've got it even worse than us. But Ange is so silly in some of his approaches, I find.
His press conferences.
The way he talks to some journalists is just, and I know that some, to be fair to him, some of the questions that have been put to him have been, you know, that have been quite provocative, sure. But many that he's responded to in pretty rude terms haven't been. And I don't think he's been called out enough on that, to be fair. Yeah.
If actually, Rebecca Lowe, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, I asked her about it because she started off her career on the sideline back in the day with Setanta and then ESPN. And it is one of the I don't think people realize just how tough that moment is for that journalist. Now, sometimes they do ask stupid questions and daft questions. We'll admit that. But it's one of the hardest questions to ask a manager, especially when they lose, right? But Rebecca, because my issue is how he looks down, he never looks up at anyone. And maybe that's just like a character thing. I don't know. I'm not going to kill the guy on that. But, you know, she agreed that he was rude. She thought Pep was kind of arrogantly rude, understated way sometimes. And she felt like Mikel was learning and has learned so much kind of doing his pressers. She doesn't think Mikel's rude. She just thinks Mikel is a straight shooter, right?
Yeah.
And it just when you told me you were taking a couple of days off, I was like, good for you, because it just felt like even after some of the great conversations we had on the show with, you know, Keith Hackett and Graham Hunter, who was brilliant last week, you would love the Zubimendi Williams stuff that he shared. You know, really good stuff. And it just seems like there's this insatiable appetite for conflict.
Yeah. People love it.
And yeah.
I love it as well, to be fair. Yeah, I watch loads of shows that are just like reality TV because I love that drama. Like, it's just a natural human instinct to love it, isn't it? You know?
Right, yeah. And I love conflict if it's done in a healthy kind of way, right? And you're not berating your club, or you're not, you know, being abusive, really, right? And and also, where do those opinions sometimes, what are they based on, right? They're based on knowledge, or they're based on insights. And I think everyone has every right to say how they feel. But it just feels like sometimes as a fan base, we don't help ourselves. And that sometimes I think we load the gun, we provide the ammo to the opposition. But I also think at the end of the day, Tom, I don't know what you think of this, is the team is responsible to change that narrative. I don't think fans can change the perception of Arsenal. The only way we're going to gain respect is when we win. And I don't think Mikel Arteta, this team, they will never get the respect that they deserve, the narrative they deserve in the media, unless they win the Premier League or the Champions League. I don't even think a League Cup or an FA Cup would do it.
No. And I don't think it would for Arteta's biggest critics among our fan base either. It would be, I know that the lot of things he hasn't won anything, but as soon as he did, say, pick up a League Cup or an FA Cup, the goalposts would shift again. So it's not a Premier League, it's not a Champions League. And that's why, for me, I've always been very consistent in my opinion on Arteta, which is in this contract, he has to deliver a Premier League title or a Champions League title to justify the next contract. Because otherwise, I don't really see progression. I'm not seeing us move to that next step. He took us to that next level in the last term that he was with us, within his last contract. He took us to that next level by putting us into the title challenge position and back into that race. But he has to show within this contract that he can take us to that next level. Some fans have made their minds up and believe that he can't do that. Fair enough. I respect your view. I disagree with it, but I respect it. And for me, I want to wait to see if he's able to do it, because I think he's earned the right to be able to do it. And I think we need to back him as well in terms of, finances in the summer, of backing the signings and getting in the players that we know that we need, that we all know that we need. We can't bash the manager and then at the same time think that we clearly need to bring in more players, because it's a case of one or the other. The manager's taken us as far as I think this squad is capable. I think he maximised our squad last season to finish 2 points off a ridiculous Manchester City team, who have a far better squad overall than we do. To get 2 points off of that, he without a doubt maximised, the capacity of that side with what was available to him. This season, unfortunately, he's had a worse squad because of the issues that we've had to deal with. Not having Saka for as long as we haven't had him for, the injuries to other key figures in the team consistently, and obviously the chaos that's gone against us as well. But yeah, I feel as though that we're in a position where if Arsenal find that magic in the summer, which they're certainly looking to do, and that not just at centre forward, but there's other positions we need to cover off as well. I think this team can absolutely win those major honours. But if he doesn't deliver it in this contract, then I can't disagree with the argument that he's taken us as far as he can.
I tell you, people say when I say this out loud, they call me naive. And of course, you've got teams like Inter Milan, Barcelona, who, Graham Hunter thinks actually the Champions League has come maybe too soon for them. He doesn't see them being able to have that maturity, killer instinct. It's a really good piece in that show where he talked about, Barcelona, Real Madrid are playing Manchester City. Your money's on Real Madrid, the pedigree. Bayern Munich seem to have found their feet this season. They're going to be tough. Maybe Inter Milan and Bayern Munich, the two teams you absolutely do not want to face. Juventus have been playing pretty decent.
Yeah. Amazing what a loan signing can do.
But when I say why can't we win the Champions League, why can't I say that is because of what history tells you about our pedigree in the competition. But something has to change at some point in a season, Tom. Why not? Tell me why I should maybe not get my hopes up about the Champions League.
Well, because we're probably going to be without our best player for the last 16 game. Is the biggest one as to why Arsenal may not be able to progress, depending upon who our opponent is. But to be honest, like those opponents we look, Juve, AC Milan, PSV, and Feyenoord. Realistically, Arsenal should be progressing past those teams. Juventus are very good. Milan are a decent side. But I still think that we're a better team. Even without Saka, I think we should be progressing past them. But his absence will, of course, be a problem. And Martinelli, there's suggestions he may not be ready for those games. I sincerely hope that he is back by then. But there's a chance that he might not be. And, of course, we don't know what's going to happen between now and then with other members of the squad, either. So we definitely can. There's always a can win that. But I'd say I was more confident last season in the team that was available going into those games against Bayern Munich than, say, if we drew Bayern Munich this time around. Last season, I said that I thought this Arsenal team can beat Bayern Munich and arguably should have progressed. If this time, if we drew Bayern Munich, I would put them as quite clear favourites, actually, because of the situation our squad is in and because of their improvement this season as well.
Yeah, see, I've got a couple of people laughing at me. I mean, I'm very, very well aware of our pedigree in Europe, guys. But Chelsea's, I know they had a much better team, but they were very lucky the year I don't care what anyone says, the year they won the Champions League against Barcelona. That was a very lucky freaking final.
That's the joy of those tournaments, though, is that teams like that can win. You look at Greece with the Euros, like sometimes you need things to fall your way. And it relies on you being good as well, but you also need that bit of luck to go.
We beat France, the Czech Republic. We beat Portugal twice. We were actually a lot better. We played.
Yeah, but you still had to have your fair share.
You needed a little luck. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, exactly, Lone Star. You always need luck. Took City years to win it. This is. I'm trying to find. Because I don't want to lose kind of enthusiasm, Tom, in the Premier League title race, because I think anything can still happen.
Yeah.
The Champions League excites me because it almost feels like the year when no one thinks we'll do anything could be the year that we actually do something. And so I'm kind of putting my eggs in the Champions League basket and, I'll end up being upset, I'm sure. But at some point, there has to be like a why not us attitude towards it. And I'm sure Mikel Arteta is laser focused on that Champions League, thinking that we've got a better chance of maybe getting to the latter stages than catching Liverpool in the Premier League. Right. Tom, brilliant stuff. Absolutely excellent. 250 plus in live chat right now. Please do hit the like button. What's your parting shot for the squaddies this evening? We've got Leicester, we've got some games coming up, we've got West Ham, we've got Manchester United, we've got a strategy where it's can't drop any points, fine margins too tight, got to win everything, might be impossible. But what is your kind of, closeout to the squaddies this evening about the Gunners?
Take breaks from them would be it. Because I've enjoyed my breakaway from it this weekend, just shutting away Arsenal. I had a couple of people message me kind of things about, and I just said to them, I was like, ask me next week, because I'm just detaching. I came back for a brief second to laugh at Liverpool, which was enjoyable, but I think people take Arsenal and football in general way too seriously for me. Like I've learned that it's certainly not the be all and end all. It's just not worth. When Arsenal lose, I struggle with it as any fan does. But as soon as kind of that hour or two afterwards is done, I'm over it by then. And having that ability to focus on things that are far more important in life. I've had so much go on in the last 2 years to put things into perspective for me regarding this sport. I think and also one of the things that I experienced, I think in particular on a social level this week in the channel was, the channel's been very heavy in regards to kind of like the trolls and the hate that you get. I get it. I get a situation where there'll be people that I've blocked on TGT, and whenever I hop on here or somebody else, they'll pop up or whatever, because that they exist. But I found it quite amusing that after I left, some of the first comments I got when I was back, obviously other than the people saying, good to have you back and I'm glad you had a break, etc., was the people who couldn't wait to again start hating again. and like as if they've been waiting all weekend for the show to come back, because you have to understand that for some, trolling online is all they have. That's the only dopamine shot that they get. And when you recognize that, and when you realize that, it becomes far easier to ignore it or to just get rid of them, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely been a key learning part of that process, is that I don't have to listen to things I don't want to really listen to. I don't have to pay attention to what I don't want to. I can control, you know, so much about what I want to enjoy or what I want to see, and that's something I think people should learn to take control. So if indeed you are struggling with Arsenal not perhaps getting the right results, and football's become such attachment to your life that if Arsenal lose a game, you genuinely cannot in any way, shape or form change your mood within an hour or two of the game finishing, I'd recommend taking a step back, you know, and I say it sincerely, seek out things like therapy. I've got a therapy session tomorrow morning. I'm really looking forward to it. You know, it's a really important aspect of things. So yeah, it's important to take your breaks when they come, because you need them, and just block or mute the people that you don't need to hear from. It's great. Take control, people, is what I'm saying.
Definitely. And by the way, we asked, I don't want people to think we're avoiding it, but we were asked about Lee saying, you know, giving his season ticket back. If Lee feels like
he's such a fool. He's a fool, but he's a fool.
I mean, he needs to check himself a couple of times this season.
Does. I love him to bits, judges.
He, and by the way, he would never give up that season ticket.
Oh, of course he wouldn't. Of course he wouldn't.
No, not at all. And yeah, taking a break is a good thing. You know, I think for me, you know, when life happens, I think you reassess what's important. And I've found like focusing on Tony, Vinny, Vesper, like the other things outside of football, really important. I think one of the things that has helped me is I don't watch just a crap game anymore. I used to watch everything, even everything. And when I mean everything, whenever there's football on, I'm watching it. And I think picking and choosing the games that I watch now has really helped me as well. Because I'll watch other things, you know, and also you mentioned that G's dad's 60. Well, you know, at my brain, at my age, I'm old enough to be your mum, remember? I like to do puzzles. I love my Wordle. I love my connections, my New York Times crossword, all these things that kind of keep my brain moving quickly and stimulating my mind, going out in the garden, sitting there, you know, doing it. Those things are important. Yeah, for sure.
I see you more of a podcast sister, Sophie, than a podcast mum, if that's any benefit at all.
I like that. I mean, I've been waiting for you to say that. I mean, I've given you the opportunity to actually say that out loud, because you do in our WhatsApps. But to say it out loud so everyone can hear, finally, Tom, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mike is very much a podcast grandfather, though, just for the record.
Among other things. Me and Sophie are Tom's real parents. That's hilarious. Okay. You're back in the morning after your little hiatus?
Of course.
Yeah?
8 a.m.s are, I don't know when the next break will come. It'll be another while before it does. But 8 a.m. tomorrow morning as usual. For those that aren't blocked. Your
next presser is coming up this week? Wednesday?
Friday, I think it'll be.
Friday.
The players are back from Dubai, I think tomorrow, to my understanding. So see what kind of mood Arteta's in, see how the tan is on Friday. I'll be very jealous. Yeah,
don't ask him about steak. Don't do that. Don't ask him about steak.
I really hope he's not done that. What a social media disaster.
Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, squaddies, thanks so much for joining. Lots of love to each and every one of you. Go follow Tom if you're not already. I'll be listening to the morning show. We've got other guests coming up this week, just waiting to schedule some times in. But we'll have Charles Watts on this week as well. So another good football conversation incoming. Until then, look out on the community page for all of the news at Squaddies. And don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. Night, night.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.